al-Zawahiri to a home in downtown Kabul where he was hiding with his family. The strike was carried out on Sunday when Zawahiri was standing in his balcony and 2 US missiles killed him. In a big jolt to Al-Qaeda, as Ayman al-Zawahiri was leading the terror group after Osama bin Laden's death in 2011. Zawahiri, in fact, helped coordinate the September 11 attacks on the Twin Towers that killed nearly 3,000 people in the US and, in fact, had a $25 million bounty on his head. US President Joe Biden has now called the operation a success. In fact, FBI has also updated its website, marking Zawahiri as deceased.
The United States successfully concluded an airstrike in Kabul, Afghanistan that killed the emir of Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri. You know, Zawahiri was bin Laden's leader. He was with him the whole time. He was his #2 man, his deputy at the time the terrorist attack 9/11. He was deeply involved in the planning of 9/11. One of the most responsible for the attacks that murdered 2,977 people on American soil. And since the United States delivered justice to bin Laden 11 years ago, Zawahiri has been a leader of Al-Qaeda, the leader. Now, justice has been delivered, and this terrorist leader is no more.
While there are several repercussions and implications of this, one big question is the link for India and what this killing really means for India. Now, Zawahiri's death may impact Al-Qaeda supporters and their regional outfits in India. Close ties between the Al-Qaeda and Taliban is also not good for Indian interests as well. But let's go across to Mirna's editor Nikunj, who's joining us here on the broadcast to put a little more perspective onto this. Nikunj, this obviously has several layers of this, what it really means as far as India is concerned. Can you break it down for us?
Well, yes, Avni, intelligence agencies will, after any such massive strike, will draw an internal assessment. And India is, of course, no stranger to terror, and at least direct linkages have been seen in the past between the groups that have operated traditionally out of Afghanistan, backed by Pakistan, and Indian side of Kashmir. Of course, those groups have been sheltered, bolstered, provided wherewithal by the Pakistan and Pakistani army, and that's the pivot, that's also the connect that ties up the entire region between Afghanistan, Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and Indian side of Kashmir. So the fact remains that in this assessment, the Indian intelligence agencies believe that there could be some migration of the cadre from Al-Qaeda to Al-Qaeda in Indian subcontinent, which has of late been a little more prolific and a little more active in terms of carrying out or at least claiming terror attacks on Indian soil, or at least plotting them against India's interests even abroad. The fact of the matter is that if you look at the end of it all, you know, be all and end all, a terrorist is a terrorist. It does not matter much whether he operates under the so-called flag of Al-Qaeda in Indian subcontinent or Al-Qaeda. What matters is what kind of wherewithal he has, what kind of intent and training he has. In that sense, it is certainly going to impact the morale of overall terrorist cadres, be it the cadres operating under the banner of AQIS or Al-Qaeda. That is a good thing. Even if a migration happens or some sporadic prolific strikes are being planned by the cadres just to try and show that Al-Qaeda is not completely down and out, and they still retain the capability of carrying out some big strikes. Remember, those strikes are out of bound almost for Al-Qaeda now on the American soil, and not so much even on the European soil. So they may think that such strikes can be carried out against India, which they obviously portray as a very close and a close-knit companionship with the United States of America. So in that sense, you have to be on guard. It certainly is going to be a crucial blow to the morale of the cadres. And if there is some sporadic terrorist activity, for that you will have to keep an eye out for. However, in the overarching scheme of things, it yet again exposes Pakistan. It yet again exposes the duality or the double-facedness of the regime in Afghanistan, the Taliban, for which India actually has of late been trying to find a balance, but a large majority of the world opinion still wants it to be completely banned, and there is a very strong undercurrent in people who believe that Talibanis are no more than a globally sanctioned terrorist organization. So it's a big blow to Taliban. It once again exposes Pakistan. It also is certainly a morale killer for the terror cadres. In that sense, it certainly is a good news for India, and that I would see as the near 360-degree impact of this strike on India and India's interests.
Kunj, just one point that you had talked about with the Al-Qaeda Taliban, which their tie-up sort of this exposes as well, and the India implication of that, because like you were saying, India is already playing a balancing act as far as Afghanistan and Taliban are concerned. So how will this further put pressure on India?
Well, Avni, it quite clearly brings the pressure on the Indian dispensation. It will certainly not be easy for the regime in New Delhi, Mr. Narendra Modi's government, to do or transact any kind of business which they have been wanting to transact with Taliban. Remember, there is certainly a strategic element of strategic compulsion, even if it is not full strategic compulsion. There is an element of strategic compulsion to somehow cooperate and find a working ground, at least, with the regime, any regime for that matter, in Afghanistan, because otherwise you give completely a walkover to the Pakistan, which then uses Afghanistan as a strategic depth. Not to say that your stronger ties with Afghanistan or particularly with a regime like Taliban will elbow out Pakistan or Pakistan's activities out of Afghanistan. That's not going to happen. They're very strong ties. Taliban is almost interwoven in the Pakistani security establishment, or if you wish to put it like this, that the elements of the extensions of Pakistani security establishment are almost interwoven in the Taliban government. So it's very, very difficult to draw a distinction out there. It's very, very difficult to sort of separate the two and push India's interest. However, as I said, that the government's attempt to find a working relationship with the Taliban government will also increasingly come under duress. And given the strident positions that the BJP in the past has taken while it was in opposition and even in the government, it will increasingly become difficult because the opposition will continue to very robustly challenge that kind of position being taken by the government of the day, particularly with this kind of exposed relationship now that the world is seeing between Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and the Pakistani establishment.
Absolutely, Nikunj. Thank you so much for joining us and putting all of that into perspective. Well, earlier, Congress leader Shashi Tharoor also reacted to Zawahiri's killing and what it meant for India. Listen in.
Not, unfortunately, the end of the story, because the threat of terrorism is as an ideology that influences a lot of people. And we have seen in the past that the passing of one individual usually results in the naming of another individual, whether it is with Al-Qaeda, whether it is with ISIS, Daesh, whether it's with the Taliban. So targeting individuals can give us a certain satisfaction that the leadership has been decapitated. But the problem continues and the world has to remain on guard. Their targeting of India particularly, we have no access to classified information, the government can speak to that, has not so far been seen to be particularly significant. So they are not the one. We have more, shall we say, we have problems closer to home from people just across the border and some perhaps already here whom we have to worry about, rather than ISIS, Daesh and Al-Qaeda, which are farther away. But this menace continues.
Now, according to foreign media reports, slain Al-Qaeda head Zawahiri was living in a house that belonged to a top aide of the interior minister in the Afghan government. In fact, Sirajuddin Haqqani, the interior minister in Afghanistan government, is also the head of the dreaded terror group as well, the Haqqani network, and is believed to have close ties with the Al-Qaeda. Haqqani has also hit a $10 million bounty on his head. Reports say members of the Haqqani network tried to conceal Al-Qaeda leader Zawahiri and restricted access to the site where he was killed. The US has reacted to reports calling hosting of a terrorist by Afghanistan a violation of the 2020 US-Taliban deal to bring peace. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Taliban grossly violated the Doha Agreement and repeated assurances that they would not allow Afghan territory to be used by terrorists. And let's get you some more breaking news coming in. Taiwan's legislative building is apparently rolling out the red carpet.